Hey guys, Britta Albert here. I'm just going to pop in with a quick video in the intro. This video is a bit different than my other videos. With this video, I actually was struck with an idea that I really wanted to do, and I was driving and it was raining, so I just had my Bluetooth in and I just started recording a voice memo. And you can hear, it's kind of annoying, you can hear the turn signal a couple times and you can hear like the tapping of the rain on the windshield. But I've tried re-recording this a few times because I wanted to do it in video instead of just audio. But there are a few things that I say that I just can't repeat. I can't get it to come out the same way that I did when I recorded it. So I've decided to go ahead and keep the audio recording. So I recommend for this one, go ahead and put on your favorite headphones and sit back, relax, and enjoy the story.
Some of the things that I experienced in my life have shown me the love that God is. And although I struggle with calling Spirit, Source, God because of my Christian background, regardless of what you call it, him, her, there is love there. And where Jesus often talked about the shepherd who would leave the 99 to go and find the one. And sometimes Jesus himself is referenced as the shepherd. I can say from personal experience that I understand exactly what that means. And guess what? It's not just talking about physical people who are living. I have experienced personally going after the lost who have chosen, which I'll get back to at another time, to reside in the etheric realm. Number one, when you die, you are not instantly all-knowing. This is what Jesus was referring to when he said it can happen like a thief in the night. To be prepared. Because if you are not prepared, if your mind is not aware of the messages that he was actually preaching to you, not warning about hell, but trying to show the kingdom of heaven that is here now within you already, what you believe is what you take with you when you die. And the more indoctrinated you are, the more asleep you are, the more unaware you are of the truth, the more intertwined in fear-based belief systems you are, the longer your recovery period is. And when I say recovery period, the best way that I can describe it is a hospital that is like a hologram. Say, for example, a soldier is in battle. And when I was in the army, they talked about a weapon called a mortar, which is essentially a bomb. When the enemy comes across a mortar, this is gruesome, and I apologize in advance, but they refer to it as pink mist, which means that your body is obliterated in a fraction of a second. Your brain does not have the time to send the signals to the rest of your body to let you even experience fear. No pain, no fear, just in an instant you're gone. How do you think that soldier can respond psychologically? That soldier doesn't even know that it's dead. Now this branches off in many directions. So one of the directions is that soul of the soldier goes to a hospital type environment that is a hologram of what the soldier was experiencing. And through people coming into the soldier's life or environment, the soldier slowly wakes up to realize who he is. In the grand scheme of things, he experiences an awakening, and Much like in The Sixth Sense, Bruce Willis's character, he comes to realize that he had died. Sometimes that place is the ethers. Sometimes it's a higher vibration, sometimes it's a lower vibration, and what people would consider hell. If you are in war and you are constantly reliving war until you wake up to the fact that you no longer need to relive war and you already are dead, would you not consider that hell? So it's very important to know who you are truly before you die. So then there are those who, because they don't know who they are, or other reasons, again, which we'll get to later, because they don't know who they are when they die, they know they're dying, and they have fear-based belief systems of heaven and hell and misunderstandings of what both of them are and who God is and who they are themselves. They choose not to go anywhere, and they choose to stay in the ethers. And in some cases, if they stay in the ethers, they can experience what we would consider madness. So say there's a soul trapped in the ethers, and that soul desperately wants to move somewhere else. And Catholics, I guess you could consider the ethers to be, what's the word that they use? I will find out before posting this. But the middle ground. So if a soul's trapped in the ethers, and it is part of, the soul is not the soul in its entirety. The soul is just a part of the entire higher self, because the entire higher self is just a part of all source consciousness, aka God. Okay? So everything is multifaceted. Everything is multidimensional. We are multidimensional. And this is where I said I'll come back later to the other ways that a soul can be trapped in the ethers, or ghosts, how ghosts exist. So this story in particular, getting back to the point, is about how God is loving. So say that there's a soul trapped in the ethers, and this soul desperately wants to move on. For simplicity's sake, for this soul, for just the sake of this story, we'll say that this soul believes in heaven and hell, and this soul understands that it's not necessarily in hell, but it wants to move on to heaven. And the soul doesn't know how to do that. The soul cries out to God. God, save me. Please save me. Now, God has the ability to do whatever God wants to do. You take, for example, the story of Jonah and the whale. And Jonah and the big fish, whatever. Where he's in the belly of this big fish, and he has this conversation with God that no matter where he is, there's nowhere he can go to hide from God, because he was hiding on that ship to not do what he was supposed to do. The ship encountered a storm. He tells the captain, I know why there's a storm. The captain's really superstitious, and okay, so we're gonna all die because we got this guy in our boat, so we need to get rid of this guy, so let's throw him overboard. And the whole crew's like, yeah, because they're all superstitious and believe that. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but they throw Jonah overboard, and instead of Jonah drowning in the ocean, then a great big fish swallows him. So Jonah has this conversation with God saying, it doesn't matter where I am, whether I'm on heaven, whether I'm on earth, whether I'm under the earth, there's nowhere I can go that you do not see me. And I have learned this firsthand because I have been sent to assist before. So there have been times before I moved back to South Carolina, I experienced so many different ghosts, spirits. I learned so much in such a short period of time. Most of what I know about human psychology comes from counseling ghosts, counseling spirits. And that's what I thought I was going to do. You don't make any money doing it, so I didn't really care about my everyday job as long as it gave me the ability to pay my bills and gave me the ability to be present in my children's life and gave me enough freedom that I could do what I felt my calling was, which was to help trapped souls move on, cross over. And when given the opportunity, yes, you can cast out spirits from a place, but then where do they go? And ultimately, how does that help them? How does that help anybody? If you cast out, all right, so I'm gonna take a quick break from this, but keep it in the same line. When Jesus met the man who was possessed by a legion of lower density entities, parasites, if you want to call them. Don't know if the Bible necessarily calls them demons, not actually. Maybe the English translated versions do, but not the actual Aramaic words. So anyway, so whatever the entities were that were inside that man, Jesus cast them into the swine. And then they went into the ocean and they killed the swine. So if you are to cast things out, where do they go? And I learned this the hard way. When I was in Oregon, there was a girl who came into my apartment. And I remember it was in the summer, so I had my windows open, and I was just laying on the bed feeling the breeze from the windows coming in, and it was really relaxing. It was really nice. I was almost asleep, and I was laying on my back with my head on the pillow and one of my arms over my head, just resting on the top of my head. And my hand itself was open. And I felt somebody's fingers slide into my fingers as if they were holding my hand. Now, this was unsettling because I had just divorced my husband, or I just left him, and the divorce was pending. My kids were there, but they were little. They had very little hands, and they were asleep. So, relatively, I was alone. So, I jolted up, sat up, and there was nothing there. A few nights later, she came back, and it was a Hispanic girl, probably about 16 or 17 years old, and I didn't want to deal with her. I didn't know how to deal with her. I had just kind of accepted this back into my life. I was still really afraid of the supernatural. I had no idea how to do anything, so I pushed her energy out. I told her she needed to go. I told her that she couldn't be there. And I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know if she crossed over. I didn't know, like, what happens when you push entities out of a space where they're in. Well, I found out. This is the story of how I met one of my best friends, Nikki. Prior to this experience, I had never spoken to my downstairs neighbors before. To be honest, I was a little bit intimidated because she was really, really pretty, and I had a lot of self-conscious issues, so I don't know, I had a really hard time just approaching them and even saying hi and introducing myself. I was going through a lot. I was going through a divorce. I was a young mom. Felt really alone in the world, and then here's this girl who's so pretty, and she's everything that I felt that I wasn't, and, so I had never spoken to her. Well, she was outside, and I happened to be outside. I think we'd just come home from the grocery store or something, and she was apparently shaken enough that she asked me if I ever experienced anything strange in my apartment before. So I kind of inquired as to what she was talking about. And she told me that they'd been living there like 2 or 3 years and they'd never experienced anything. And then all of a sudden I move in upstairs and Then they started experiencing like shadows across the wall and things being thrown. And the more that we talked, we were actually able to pinpoint it within 5 or 10 minutes of the activity starting in her place to when I cast out the girl from my place. So I can tell you that yes, you can clear a home. Yes, you can clear a building. Yes, you can clear whatever. But just because you don't have to deal with it anymore doesn't mean it's not there. Doesn't mean it goes away. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist somewhere else. And what happened is that this girl was coming to me for help. I was too afraid to deal with her at the time. I cast her out, and that made her angry. And then she was taking out her anger on these innocent people below her, or below me. So I told them how to get her to leave. Again, I didn't understand why you should do it out of love. What's the benefit of doing it out of love? I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew is that they were scared. Their cats were scared. It was Nikki and her husband and their 2 kitties. And it was just terrorizing their apartment. And so I told them, I said, you need to come together. You need to claim ownership of your home. You need to stand together firm. You're not going to be compromising. The spirit must leave. This is your home, which is not incorrect. This is the right way to do this. But it wasn't done out of love. And in certain circumstances, you have to do what's best for your family. And I understand that. So I'm not saying that what I told them was wrong, but there was another way. There was a better way that I could have handled it and that they could have handled it. But I didn't know that at the time. So they cast her out. Now she's no longer confined to the building. Y'all, this girl's on the property of the apartment complex. And she's like wandering around the grounds. And she was not done with me yet. And it was because of this young Hispanic ghost that I learned a great lesson. And it actually started this new path that I thought I had for myself. She taught me that God is so loving. When I finally communicated with her, all she was trying to do this whole time was to make sure her mom and her sisters were okay. She was choosing not to move on because she was afraid of how her mom and her sisters were doing. And unfortunately, this girl died in a very tragic way. She was raped and murdered from the best that we could figure out. I tried to figure out exactly who she was. I looked up records from what she appeared to be late 80s, early to mid 90s is when about she died, based upon what she was wearing and all that. I never got a name from her, but again, remember, I'm very, very new at this, and I'm very, very new at actually talking to them, and it's not like I'm sitting here having a full conversation. It's bits and pieces that I can get, because it's not actual words, it's like telepathic communication, and the more chaotic her energy is, the more upset she is, the less I can understand her, because it's like talking to somebody who's going through a bad area on their cell phone. You can get like every other syllable. So I'm trying my best to understand her. I couldn't actually figure out who she was. I took the information that she gave me. I tried to look past in past news articles of things that happened in that apartment complex. Why was she in that apartment? There's so many different reasons. She didn't have to even die there to be there. That could have been where her mom and her sisters lived before she died. And that's what I believe it was. But of course, I couldn't get access to that information. There's no way the apartment complex would give me that information. And beyond that, actually, I'm not even sure if the apartment complexes were a thing. Actually, it could have been a house that was there before and that got torn down to make room for these apartment complexes. I don't know. But I think that that's really why she was there. I don't believe that she died there. I think that at one time she lived there with her mom and her sisters. And she didn't want to let go because she wanted to make sure that they were okay. And she wanted to be there for them. And she was so worried about her mom and her sisters. So I really struggled at first, but then I felt God, spirit, source at the time, I still called it God. I felt God showed me a vision. And God used my emotions as a mother to show me my child, my 4-year-old Beau, my son. God showed me him stuck in the ethers. And this is actually a much more perfect example, but I did not have this example at the time because this was 9 years ago. But the show Stranger Things, that is exactly the love of God, and that is exactly what he showed me. The mother knowing, how can you even begin to understand that your child is not dead? That your child is communicating with you. How can you even, the logic of it, she didn't even try to make a logic of it. She didn't care. She just wanted to save her son, and she was going to move heaven and earth and under the earth in order to save her son. She didn't care who believed her. She didn't care how crazy she seemed. There's nothing that was going to stop her from saving her son. And that is what God showed me. He showed me my child stuck in the ethers. And it's really amazing because the image that he gave me, now that I think about it, that show, Stranger Things, when they showed the upside down, the what looks like ash kind of everywhere, and then the darker colors, that was actually very much what the ethers looked like that God showed me. Now that's not really what the ethers look like. It can be, but this is just what he was showing me at the time. So he was saying to me, if me as a mother, if I were to move heaven and earth to save my child, who's calling out for me and saying, Mama, where are you? Mama, save me. Of course, I would do everything. You could not stop me. If I had to kill myself to send my soul to go get his soul, I'm doing it. There's nothing that can stop me. And he showed me that if I would be unstoppable to save my child, no matter where my child is, how much more so is he going to go after his? So if there is somebody who is stuck in the ethers, who's calling out for him, who's ready to let go of why they chose to stay there, who's ready to move on, but they're stuck and they need help, he sees them. And he is not going to let them be stuck there. He's going to grab them himself, or he's going to find somebody like me who's willing to be used for that purpose to assist. And so I did. And so I consoled that girl. I could not find her mother. I could not find her sister. But I was able to encourage her to go on because I was able to help her understand that if she stayed here, that whenever her mom and her sister died, she would still be disconnected from them. And if she were to move on, that whenever her mother and her sister died, they would be expecting her to greet them, to be there, to help them. And she needed to be there for them, to greet them when they crossed over. And I was finally able to help her cross over. And it was amazing. And I was hooked. And that is what I spent the better part of my time in Oregon doing. And one of the things that I loved about the South when it came time to move back to the South was, I know that the South is very Bible Belt, but there's so many ghost stories out here. There's so much rich history, especially when it comes about the Civil War and things like that. So one of the things that was an appeal to come back here, there were many, many, many reasons, but this is one of them, is that I felt like I could exercise what I was doing more. I could have more opportunity to be around spirits and help more spirits move on. Out here, an area with a very, very, very rich history with ghosts. So that is my story about God's love, how hell is not eternal, and if I, as a mother, would do anything I could to save my child, move heaven and earth and under the earth, how much more so will God? And how much more so does He love His children, living and dead, to find them and help them to become closer to Him, to release them, to free them. And that is the kingdom of God. That is the kingdom of heaven that Jesus was talking about. So I hope that this was, I don't even know what this would be. I hope that this was a different perspective maybe than you've ever thought of before or that you've ever seen before. I'm not here to preach a doctrine. I'm not here to preach a theology. I'm not here to preach. I'm here to practice what I help others do. And that is to remove the obstacles that are standing in the way of you living your best and most authentic life. I'm here to be an example, to lead by example of what it looks like to live your best and most authentic life. I'm not saying it's not scary, but it is freeing and it's beautiful. And I'm so enjoying the freedom that is coming from sharing what I know with you guys. And I can only share what my experiences are. If anybody tells you that they know the full truth, be very, very wary of them. The more I learn, the more I know I don't know. So the only thing I can do is tell you what I've experienced. And along the journey, you're going to see the evolution of my own thoughts and beliefs, because one thing that I encounter years later, I learned that it was something completely different, or learned that my perspective was skewed, or learned that it wasn't what I thought it was. So as I go, I do want to share my evolution of thought with you as well, to be completely vulnerable, transparent, whether it's embarrassing or not, to let you guys see what my thoughts were and why I reacted the way that I did. Most of the time, it's out of fear. And then what happens when I discover love and how to handle a situation out of love versus fear, and how much more impactful that is. So thank you guys for listening. You guys are amazing. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.